which is the circulatory system. So the circulatory system is composed of two main things, the heart. So I'm just going to draw the heart, a traditional version of what we know the heart to look like as a symbol. We know that the heart doesn't actually look like that, but just as a symbol. And then the lungs. So I've mentioned this before, I'm a horrible drawer, but more or less you'll get the idea. And then this is our body. We are happy. Okay, so the heart is a pump. Think of it like a trampoline or a catapult for the blood to shoot around in the whole body. What the lungs do is the lungs filter the blood and they take the carbon dioxide and release it and they put oxygen in and they send that out through the whole body. So let's take a little look at how that works. We have the blood from your whole body is going up and in to the heart. And then the heart is like a pump, so it's going to spiral up into the lungs where the oxygenation process happens. And then from the lungs, it wouldn't be able to reach the rest of the body because it doesn't have any inertia. So it needs to go back into the heart. My marker isn't very strong. It goes back into the heart, where again, the heart is like this catapult, this trampoline that's going to push and pump the oxygenated blood out of the heart and into the whole body. Okay, so more or less, this is how it works. The deoxygenated blood, so oxygen poor blood, so oxygen poor blood from the body is going up into the heart. The heart pumps it up into the lungs. That doesn't mean that the right lung only does deoxygenated blood and the left lung does oxygenated blood. Both lungs deal with both oxygen and deoxygenated, right? But this is just the diagram. And then from the lungs, it's going to go back into the heart where it's oxygenated, rich blood. And it goes into the heart where it gets pushed to oxygenate the whole body. So when we're talking about right and left in the heart, we're talking about systemic circulation and pulmonary circulation. What does that mean? So this is as if I'm this person looking at you. This is my right hand. So the right side of my heart is the systemic circulation, which is going to take the oxygen poor blood and pump it up into the lungs. Now, so systemic circulation. Pulmonary circulation is when on the left side of the heart, the blood is pumped out to the rest of the body. So we can think of the heart as this big push for the blood. So when we're talking about the tubes that carry the blood, we're talking about arteries, capillaries, and veins. Arteries, I like to call them outeries because they carry the oxygenated blood out to the rest of the body. So arteries, I like to call them outeries because they bring oxygen-rich blood out. There is one exception, and that is your pulmonary artery, which is the only artery located on the upper left side of your heart, which is going to carry oxygen-poor blood. And that's the only artery that carries oxygen-poor blood, pulmonary artery. So sad face because it's oxygen-poor blood. But that is the only exception. Then if we look at capillaries, they are the smallest type of blood vessels. But then even more important are veins, which I like to find the word in the word vein, because they carry deoxygenated blood back up through the body and back up into the heart and into the lungs. So veins go in, oxygen poor blood. Arteries, outeries, normally oxygen-rich blood, except for the pulmonary artery, which is an exception. So capillaries is where the hemoglobin is absorbed through. Hemoglobin is the oxygen carrying component in red blood cells. I like to think of it as a little backpack. So think of a red blood cell carrying a little backpack. That backpack is hemoglobin. If the blood cell didn't have hemoglobin, it wouldn't be able to carry oxygen. So we need hemoglobin, and it is seeped through or gets absorbed through the capillaries. That's how the exchange of oxygen happens. If we look at the walls of the arteries compared to the veins, the artery walls are going to be nice and thick. I almost like to think of the blood going through arteries as Vikings. So try and picture strong oxygenated blood vessels that are trooping through the arteries. They're maybe on their horses and they're going to go around the entire body to oxygenate. Yes. They go on the heart, that's a catapult, and they get, I'm being dramatic so that hopefully you'll be entertained and you'll remember this, because sometimes anatomy isn't always the easiest to understand. So I'm putting on this theatrical version of biology and anatomy for you so that you can maybe remember it a little bit easier. So think of the oxygenated blood in the arteries like these big Vikings that go onto the heart that is like a trampoline, a catapult. So the walls of the arteries need to be very thick to withstand this pressure, because the pressure in the arteries is going to be higher. Now, the opposite happens in veins. The walls of veins are much, much, much thinner because they have deoxygenated blood. So think of the Vikings that don't have a horse, they don't have a sword anymore, and they're tired and they're coming home from war. A silly way to remember it, but the pressure in the veins is going to be much lower than in arteries because there is no oxygen. So the muscle walls of the veins and the arteries is going to be different. Arteries are going to be nice and thick to withstand the pressure of the red blood cells that are oxygenated. Okay, that's their little oxygen. Whereas veins are going to have a thinner wall because the blood cells aren't oxygenated. So there's going to be less pressure in the veins than in the arteries. Right, let's talk about blood pressure, because it's very common that even if you're not born with a specific condition of high blood pressure or low blood pressure, you might experience, or your students might experience, one of the two throughout an asana program. First of all, let's talk about what blood pressure is. Blood pressure is the pressure in which the blood is flowing through the arteries. So how much, not how fast it's flowing or how fast the heart is beating, but rather how much tension the arteries are under. Now, how is blood pressure measured? It's measured taking two averages. Your heart beats. And so blood pressure, when you go to the doctor and they put that tight thing on your arm and it fills up and it squeezes you and then it slowly goes down. It's counting every beat on the beat, on the beat, on the beat, on the beat, and it's checking the distance between each beat. And then it's taking the average in between each beat. So now. And it's going to take those two averages and combine to understand your blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, this might mean that you're quite red in the face. It might mean that you're quite tired, you're quite flustered. Normally, someone with high blood pressure feels like everything is a big challenge. So could we say that that's like? Imagine that you're going to wash your hands at the sink and you turn the water on and it comes out so full, very, very fast, all of that water. So that would be high blood pressure. It's the opposite of low blood pressure. Someone with low blood pressure might feel very cold, might look very pale, might feel a bit weak. And low blood pressure is, say you go to wash your hands and only little droplets come out. So someone that has low blood pressure might find it very difficult to even do something quite big. They have a similar kind of fatigue. Someone with high blood pressure might even do the smallest movement and already be very tired. So you never want to place someone with high blood pressure with their head lower than where their heart is. So no inversions, no downward facing dog, nothing where their head is going to hang lower than their heart. Someone with low blood pressure, for example, if you lie down for a long time, or say you take a nice long shavasana, sometimes when you stand up really quickly and you get a bit dizzy, that's when your blood pressure is low. So you might want to come into your movements nice and slow. Take a few deep breaths. Of course, if you're very dizzy, then you want to lie down and raise your feet up on something. So this is super important because even though you're not born with a specific blood condition, you could develop either high or low blood pressure in your classes. Remember, never go too strong, listen to your limits, and try and stay within Sthira Sukham Asanam, your steady yet comfortable posture.